By the former presidential candidate and former Minister of Education, Dr. Ezekwesili, who is also a former Vice President of the World Bank, co-founder of Transparency International, co-founder of the Bring Back Our Girls campaign, and currently founder of the School of Politics, Policy and Governance here in Abuja. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you very much, Charles.
And I understand you had a pretty rough day.
No, I didn't have a rough day.
You have my apologies
I didn't
for
have
that.
a rough day. Actually, I think that what happened today was very important. It was important for Nigerians to see the kind of things that could be happening in public institutions where people with some measure of power abuse that power.
Okay, let me ask you to hold on, because I'm told that that clip is there now. Let's take a listen.
What is that? Respect yourself? Will you shut up and get him out? Smell him out. Shut up. Smell him out. Look like a dog. Look at you. Fool at 70. Fool at 70. How can you talk like that? I've been a senator.
I take exception to a senator.
Why are you talking to me like that?
You are a disgrace to the Senate.
You are an insult to womanhood.
You are
an insult to womanhood. And you are here to tell the world that you have not changed.
You cannot
violate. You are here to tell the world that you have not changed.
You are.
At 70, you have not changed.
You are a scoundrel.
I'm expecting to take it. I will not take it.
You are a scoundrel.
I will not take it.
To insult.
That is why you can never be here. People like you can never be here. People like you can never be here. How can you be? How can you be a fool?
I am not a hooligan.
You are a hooligan.
You are a hooligan. So you will be.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
The Senate committee
chairman of the committee. Chairman of the committee.
And you say I should keep my mouth shut. Who are you to say so?
Chairman.
Who are you to say so?
Chairman.
Who are you?
Okay, officer.
And you refuse.
Chairman of the committee.
Mr. Chairman, sir. Mr. Chairman, sir. Mr. Chairman, sir.
Chairman of the committee.
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman of the committee. Mr. Chairman. Chairman of the committee. Chairman of the committee. Chairman of the committee. Hello. Chairman of the committee. Hello. Chairman of the committee. My distinguished colleagues and the petitioner and those who came to defend the petition. I am Senator Dicket Plan. I move a motion that we adjourn this meeting because...
Extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. And Ezekwesili is still here with me. You just tell us what happened.
So, the petitioner on behalf of who had to sign Senator Natasha Apoti Uduanga's petition to the Senate, according to what they call the rules of the Senate, Mr. Suberu Zamaruma was before the Senate Ethics Committee, and Dr. Abiola Akiode Afolabi, quite a erudite lawyer and a woman activist, was there as his counsel. I was there as chair of the global body known as the Women Political Leaders. It's based in Brussels, but it is the global body of all women who have been presidents or who are presidents or prime ministers, parliamentarians, and members of cabinet of countries. So it's the global flagship for women political leadership. And so I was there as a witness on her side on the basis of the expert knowledge that we have of this issue around the world. It is based on data that this is a problem. 1 out of every 3 women have faced one form of sexual-based violence or the other. And so a lot of countries are paying serious attention to it because it is quite inimical to society. And so in that regard, the petitioner, when we got there and he and the witnesses were given a seat, then the petitioner started by saying that he had objections on the basis of which he wanted the Senate committee to consider his objections before he would go ahead and engage on his petition. And the Senate committee said, according to the rules of the Senate, we're not here to listen to your objection. We are just here to listen to the petition you wrote. You are the petitioner. It was a long...
And this was somebody who seconded the petition, is that right? Because,
so,
I mean, obviously...
according to their rules...
She signed, I mean, she submitted the petition. She wasn't there.
But she can't sign.
Yeah, he sort of seconded
so he had to sign it. So on the basis of that, there was a lot of rigmarole, and all the senators were doing in that committee was doing everything to let us know that the rules would make it difficult for the right of a citizen who was saying that, number one, I object on the basis of the fact that members of this Senate, especially the chair, had at various times already taken public positions on the petition of my senator. I am her constituent, and I feel injured by what has happened. And number two, I object on the basis of the fact that because of the use of the rules of the Senate as a basis to trample on the rights of my senator, she is not here as the principal witness for me to make this presentation today. And so I want that my senator should be invited. But because you have violated her constitutional rights, ruled against the law, the judicial precedents, where a senator cannot be suspended by the Senate for 6 months, I don't have her here. And so he made this very strong case, and the senators still insisted that, you know, in fact, the word they used was, we're serious, we do serious things here. We don't have time for unserious things. At which time I had my hand up and I said, I actually think that that's a wrong use of word. We are not unserious people. And this is a serious matter. And, you know, many conversations carried on. Eventually, the Senate Ethics Committee decided that, you know, based on the fact that the petitioner was saying that he wasn't going to go into his main petition until they assured him on the two objections that he had. They said, and that it meant that we were not ready to engage on the matter. And then suddenly also said, oh, by the way, this matter is sub judice because there are 2 cases in court. They mentioned the case by the wife of the Senate president, and that on the basis of that, they actually really shouldn't. So it was at that time that Dr. Abiola said, then what was the basis of...
Yeah, what's the point of being here, of convening this hearing?
And while all of that was going on, then this senator, whom I will not acknowledge by mentioning his name at all.
Well, his name is Senator Whiteboy.
That's okay. But, you know, he then said, well, if they're not serious about giving any testimony, I am here representing the Senate president as a respondent, and that I am prepared to speak because, you know, we can't continue with this. So I said to him, can you please shut up? Because, I mean, you know, we were just told that we couldn't speak, and you have been speaking without any form of a an equivalent treatment. Said we couldn't speak because we were not ready to go into any conversation without the objections being addressed. So when I said that,
so let me just get this. You said to him to shut his mouth.
Yes.
And that was what provoked the Senate.
He was already provoked.
Right.
He was already provoked because he spoke.
But it went from being a spark of a tinder box into a roaring flame.
Precisely. So he was already provoked by the fact that he felt we were not serious.
Right.
He said, in fact, part of what inflamed it was that the petitioner then said, oh, by the way, it is this senator that made a lot of statements about my senator and in words that were not complimentary. So already he was charged. And so on the basis of that, when I said to him, we're talking, so just, hold your peace.
Yeah.
He fled and then began to release all that he released, showing the kind of level of indecorous personalities that we do have within our public space.
That was quite extraordinary, I have to say. I mean, that the outburst and the kinds of things that were said, I would never in a million years have expected that to have happened, not only in the National Assembly, but certainly not around someone that we all know to be as distinguished a personality as you are. But let me say this.
Charles, before you say that,
sure,
because it's important that you said what you said. You know what? This is what women go through largely when the camera is not on in some of our public spaces. The culture of silencing the woman who wants to say, what has been done to me is not proper, is one that has attained a pattern of behavior. It was that pattern of behavior you saw on display. The only difference is that cameras could pick it up. So I want to use this opportunity to say that this I consider to be one of the distractions that the Senate wants for the purpose of ignoring the persistent call that what Senator Poti Uduaghan needs is fair hearing. Have you not observed how since the matter of this sexual harassment was alleged by her against the Senate president, they have not addressed that matter. They have done every other thing around it, thrown words, thrown statements, done all kinds of things. I want the country, I want the nation, I want the public to please ignore whatever happened at the Senate. We now see an indication of what we should be addressing as part of our systemic change. But I want us to not put our eyes away from a woman, a senator, elected by her own people, who then said that the origin of the problem that we all first saw on the floor of the Senate was actually not about seat allocation. It was that all of that happened as the consequence of having rebuffed the sexual advance that was made toward her. As an important country in the world, what we all must agree is that such a material piece of information in our public space can only be addressed through an independent investigation of the allegation. It has to be addressed through a fair hearing, and if the petitioner who signed on her behalf is saying, I am not guaranteed that fair hearing here today, it shouldn't have been a basis for the Senate to try to use the games of the rules of the Senate, which, by the way, they apply inconsistently. The rules of the Senate are subordinate to the Constitution. and the laws of the land.
Right. So
today we saw a repeat of what happened to Senator Natasha Apoti when she dared to use the process of the rules to say, under Order 10, I have to be heard.
Unfortunately, a lot of people, in spite of your call, will focus on what happened today because, I mean, as much as it is shocking, it is to a lot of people some form of perverse entertainment. So they will sort of take it on. But the hope is that in the process of taking it on, it'll draw attention to the point that you were making, which you say is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the way that women are treated. And unfortunately, you didn't actually get the opportunity to do what you came there to do today.
Well, you know, they had a destination and wanted to get there. The most successful thing that we were able to do today is to not allow them railroad the petitioner on behalf of Natasha into a kind of organized process that would lead to them saying, we find what you're saying to not match any standard of evidence.
But I mean,
and
they've
therefore,
adjourned till when?
Well, you have to have been there, because what they said is that they cannot touch the matter any further because it has gone to the courts. Now, what has gone to the courts? What they have done is to make Senator Natasha now a defendant on a case filed by somebody she never mentioned in the course of her allegation against the Senate president. So you can see clearly that what the Senate has basically decided to organizationally do is to silence this woman permanently and to dismiss the issue that is so important for our democracy to address in as if it were just an unserious matter, which was why they started off by telling us that we don't do unserious
And do you
things.
think they're likely to succeed in that quest,
Well,
that you allege?
I believe that as much as the Senate has grossly violated the Constitution, almost in a habitual kind of way, by simply not respecting that Senate rules are, the Constitution and the laws of the land are higher order than their internal rules. You know, in the United States, they have Senate rules, but the United States Senate does not consider the Senate rules. The rules are rules to guide the way they do their business. There is no way that rules can become superior to the Constitution and the laws. So what we saw was basically a determination to shut us down by saying you are, in fact, they used it, they said exactly that. And it was, you know, it was in a conversation. The person who, there were different degrees of the behavior of the senator, the senator today. There were different degrees of it coming from different senators. There were some other senators that were, you know, very, very professional in the way they responded to our dialogue. But what became very obvious is that the idea that we as a people are so easily swayed by the superior powers of the people that hold the levers of authority in our public institutions.
And people
that needs
who were
to end.
Voted in by the people, ostensibly.
Well, you know, I'm glad you used the word ostensibly, because I would be surprised if we did a proper audit of our electoral process and our elections, whether the number of people who would come out clean as having been voted and therefore holding the legitimacy of the citizens is actually significant, as we would hope. But You know one person whose legitimacy we are not in doubt at all about? It is Senator Natasha Akpabio.
Meanwhile, there's a recall petition against her from some of her constituents. Yes. I mean, whether it's orchestrated or whether it is something else, we don't know at this point. But I wonder if you've been in touch with her and what her sort of mind frame is at the moment.
I find that young woman heroic. She simply is the example of what we need our daughters to be in terms of having a very clear mind on seeking for the justice that is due her. She is not a shrinking violet by any description. So Natasha has vowed that she has to fight on until she is heard properly according to the rules of the rule of law. She believes that what has happened is that she's been made victim many times over. Now for us, as reasonable citizens, we don't know the veracity of what she alleges. I have been persistent in saying that. But what we all agree, as reasonable people, is that she made an allegation.
They must be investigated.
They must be independent.
And to be seen to be fair.
In fact, we said, let there be an independent investigation accompanying the session. In fact, what her petitioner asked, a very important part of it, was that they needed to constitute a panel, a committee that would focus on this because it is an extraordinary situation. They don't have, the committee that would have done this has smeared itself in many ways by taking the public stance of not investigating, yet saying you are lying. What you're saying is not credible, or we don't believe you. Shut up. They swore by the Senate president. How do you do that as a public institution of law? The highest lawmaking organ of our country fails to be compliant with the law in the approach that they have taken.
So how do you think, I mean, she said, as you pointed out there, that she's in it to the end. In other words, she's going to fight to the finish. Beyond that, which people often say in sort of public arena, because obviously they do feel aggrieved enough to take the fight all the way to the end. I mean, do you think this disagreement can be resolved in any other way?
This is not a disagreement. This is a serious allegation.
I understand that.
Yes, and I believe that.
But in other words, if there is some kind of, because I mean there is an allegation which is at the heart of it, but on top of that allegation, there've now been various disagreements, and if that can be resolved to create a more conducive environment for those allegations to be properly investigated,
I think that's
what I'm.
Yes, I get that. So I think that the first thing is that Nigerians must send a very strong signal to our senators, to our lawmakers in general, that the behavior of the senators, the Senate president, the institution, toward a matter of this kind has completely degraded the way that our country is perceived. And that, therefore, we as a people are saying, do the right thing. The right thing, you have to stop punishing a woman who has made an allegation against the leader of the Senate. You must stop that. You must immediately recall her from the unjust suspension and all the punishment, including saying she cannot be around the National Assembly. How do you then call the petitioner, who is a man in her constituency, who based on your rules had to sign for her. He's the only one in that sense that could be speaking to the matter. Then this citizen with constitutional rights, with legal precedences supporting him, says, I don't think I'm going to get fair hearing for my senator here if she is not here with me. But you suspended her on the basis of rules of the Senate. Citizens have to say to the Senate, we are a constitutional democracy. We cannot, the moment we all agree that everything that happens concerning the Senate of our country is on the basis of their rules.
Right.
We know what we're doing. We're setting up our democracy and our country for disaster.
We're almost out of time, but I mean, beyond the Senator Uduaghan thing, which is obviously central in many ways, I mean, given what happened today, this altercation between yourself and the Senator, do you feel diminished by it?
Excuse me. Oh my goodness. You're talking to Ezekwesili. You know, the good thing is that God has been amazing in my life. I have such a pedigree that the rest of the world, looking at that which happened in the Senate today, will definitely say they do have a problem with the matter of protecting the rights of women. They have a problem with protecting the rights of their citizens. That Nigeria does have a problem with abuse of power. Because what you heard that senator saying is, he's a senator. He's a senator? My goodness. Charles, there is no way that anything that senator said can be even a speck on the credentials that I have had. The matter of the senators acting with such impropriety, acting with such level of absolute savagery, should be something that our society wholesomely, as a whole, we must condemn.
I agree, and I should say indeed. But let me say that I'm extremely saddened by what happened today.
You don't have to be.
I'm glad that you came in to talk to us about it. Dr. Ezekwesili is a former presidential candidate, former Minister of Education, former Vice President of the World Bank, co-founder of Transparency International, co-founder of the Bring Back Our Girls campaign, and currently founder of the School of Politics, Policy and Governance here in Abuja.
May I make a request of you, Charles?
Sure.
Even if any other person in the media looks away from the matter of justice for Senator Natasha Akpabio, you must not do that. Because it matters that at pivotal moments like this, we do not think that it is just about Natasha. It is about the structural, systemic issues, the barriers that are raised to keep women shut away from the development of society. Meanwhile, evidence suggests clearly, it's evident, that countries that have paid attention to representation in governance by their women are the ones at the top of the economic league table.
Right.
So any Nigerian that cares about the prosperity of Nigeria must understand that we can't go against evidence. There's no exceptionalism about our country on that. So all of us must insist that this matter will have to get its day properly within the realms of all that our Constitution and our laws require.
Well, speaking as a member of the Arise team, I shall say, let whoever it is do their worst, and we will do our best.
Good.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Good to see you again.